up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about NFL draft prospect Penei Sewell and answering the question, is he worth the 7th pick in the draft for the Detroit Lions? Let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here. And I know what you're thinking. Is he worth the 7th pick in the draft? Of course he's worth the 7th pick in the draft. I mean, he is the consensus #1 offensive tackle. That is very true. That's very true. But really wanted to break it down in this video. Now, the reason we're doing this is because last time I brought up Penei Sewell, I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever done a Penei Sewell video. I mean, we've touched on him, we've talked about him, because of course, you can't ignore a guy like this. But I don't think we've actually done a Penei Sewell video. And with only 5 days until the draft, we got to make it happen, because if the Lions somehow landed Penei Sewell, we want to know about him a little bit. Now, it's very possible that he doesn't go to number 7 and he goes way earlier than that. But if a team like the Falcons passed or a team traded up for a quarterback, then Cincinnati passes and no one trades up, yeah, you could definitely fall to number 7, and he could be the Lions draft pick. So that's why we're going to be talking about Penei Sewell in today's video. Now, I want to go through the background first, the scheme fit, things like that, before we start getting to specifics of run blocking, pass blocking, okay? So starting off with Penei Sewell, doing a quick little background here. He's a 6'5", 331-pound left tackle from Oregon that opted out of the 2020 season. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see him last year with a lot of the top prospects in this year's class. I mean, you got Jamar Chase, you got Micah Parsons. I mean, there's a lot of guys that opted out last season. Rashawn Slater. I mean, there's a lot of those guys. Now, Penei Sewell was a 350-pound offensive guard in high school, which is kind of crazy. 350 pounds, this is a big dude in high school playing the guard position. He stepped into Oregon. He took over the left tackle role right away to protect Justin Herbert on his blind side. So that's extremely impressive that he was able to do that. And obviously he shed 20 pounds and he looked extremely, extremely agile in space. And for his size, that's what makes him so exciting as a prospect to so many people. I'm going to say it right now before we get into it. He may have the highest ceiling of any offensive tackle in this class. That's kind of how I look at it, and we'll get into why. He is only 20 years old right now, which is kind of wild if you think about it. The last time we saw him play was 2019, right? This guy was 19 years old. Think about this. Okay, look at me real quick, right? The dude was my age doing what he was doing on the field. At 330, moving, dominating like he was. That's insane. What? At 19 years old, he was doing that on the field. Not to say he wouldn't get his best competition, and we'll get into that, but that's pretty remarkable. Now, before we get into the run block and pass block, I just kind of want to go right into this, and this is the scheme side of things. Is Penei Sewell a scheme fit for the Detroit Lions? I'm going to say yes, Penei Sewell is a good scheme fit for the Detroit Lions. And that's not to say, well, he's talented, he can play any scheme. No, I think he's actually built for the Detroit Lions offense. And let me kind of explain why. Penei Sewell was in kind of a zone blocking offense that did obviously mix in some man blocking scheme, but a zone blocking offense that did a lot of play action, a lot of rollouts, a lot of screens at Oregon. And I think that actually fits what we could see a lot with the Detroit Lions next season. It's not exactly, but a lot of things that we could see from Anthony Lynn. And look, there's some connections here. First off, Anthony Lynn historically has had more of a zone rushing scheme than a man blocking scheme, which is what I saw with Penei Sewell. And that's what he was best at with Oregon, was a zone blocking scheme. So that first checks the box. Second thing, and I know it's a weird connection, they drafted Justin Herbert, who was protecting the blind side of Justin Herbert was Penei Sewell. Now, of course, Anthony Lynn bringing in Justin Herbert means that he felt like, you know, he had the qualities. Maybe he was a scheme fit for their offense. And we saw a lot of similarities from what Justin Herbert did in college to what he did with the LA Chargers. It makes me to believe that a guy like Penei Sewell could easily slide into the scheme that Anthony Lynn is going to bring to Detroit and fill the role that he's going to be looking for. Now, I thought was also interesting, and I want to do this before we get to the run and pass blocking, is that an NFC scout said this: he's immature as a worker. He needs a vet to take him under his wing. That's not a clear connection here, but Terrell Crosby was the offensive tackle for Oregon before Penei Sewell stepped in the next season as a freshman. Terrell Crosby played both left tackle and right tackle. Of course, he was drafted by the Lions in the 5th round. Now, some people thought he'd be better at guard, which obviously if you get a guy like this and he can win that role, Crosby could compete for the guard spot. So that versatility is great. They thought he'd be that. Some people thought he would coming out of the draft. But anyways, with Penei Sewell, now one knock against Penei Sewell is the lack of experience, because Sewell did miss 6 games in his freshman season. So, you know, he had a basically full 2019, but then opting out 2020. We haven't seen that many snaps. So you consider the competition and then the snaps. That is some concern for some people, and we'll get into that a little bit later. When you talk about a guy that can take him under his wing, I mean, how cool would that be, right? An Oregon guy saying, hey, Oregon, buddy, let's do this together. Okay, hey, we're both ducks here. Let's make this. Oh, a duck takes him under his wing. What? Come on, man. The reason I bring that up is because when you look at the Lions roster, we talked about this, right? Offensive linemen, they could really struggle in year one. Even if you're a first or second round pick, you can really struggle. Statistically speaking, the last couple of years, it's tough to find an immediate starter at tackle. Even if you take him at 4 in the draft, it is tough. It is very, very difficult to have that immediate success as an offensive tackle. So for the Lions, what this would allow them to do is if they drafted a guy like this, even if he's not as dominant as you would have hoped in year one, and he doesn't necessarily take over and dominate that role, it's okay, because that means you'll have your option for next season when Crosby's contract's up and potential an out for Big V. And then he already has a year under his belt where he's developed instead of relying on next season a rookie to take that role. So that's why it makes sense. I know you want the immediate impact, not saying that he can't give you the immediate impact because he could easily win that role. But even if he can't, it's not the end of the world. Plus, Brad Holmes told us, where are we in 2022? So it's not like it's a terrible thing if he can't make an immediate impact. But your best bet for an immediate impact will be your top pick, probably going offensive tackle. That will be your best bet. Okay, longer you wait, obviously there's less of a chance that he's going to make that starting impact. No guarantees. There are no guarantees in the NFL. But the earlier you do it, of course, you're probably going to have a better shot for that to happen. Now, one of the biggest questions with the scheme fit here for Penei Sewell is the fact that he played left tackle in college and he played guard at high school. There's no right tackle there. So the concern with Sewell is, well, can he play right tackle? Because for the Lions, I don't want him to take the Decker spot. I would rather him play right tackle. So the question is, can he do that? Well, he's been working out, according to Ian Rappaport, with teams playing the right tackle position. So that's great. I don't know how he looks, but that is great. So I looked up, what's the transition like from left tackle to right tackle? How is that? And we've seen a lot of guys do it over the years because a lot of the best tackles in the country go to the left side to protect the blind side. And Tristan Wirfs said this. He said they are very similar. He felt more comfortable at the right side of the offensive line. He said they are similar. The only difference is you're basically leading with the opposite hand. And I know this may sound kind of gross, but I'm going to say it. So if you don't want to hear the buggers, he's basically saying it's like wiping with the other hand. I know that sounded like what kind of dang. That's what he said. I'm just telling you, wiping with the other hand. So it's kind of like that. It takes a second to get used to, but it's not extremely different going from one tackle spot to the other tackle spot. So from hearing Tristan Wirfs, and then in the past, hearing from a former offensive lineman say how difficult the transition could be from tackle to guard, maybe it's easier to go from left tackle to right tackle to left tackle. It could be easier. And now usually the left tackle is like, oh my gosh, this is like, you gotta have a left tackle. And that's still the case, but you do need a right tackle in the NFL. I mean, there's just so many pass rushers, and they're so valuable. Pass rushers are so valuable, which means tackles are ultimately going to be valuable as well, because if you have these great pass rushers, especially when you look at our division, you're going to have guys that can protect. Look at our division alone. When you talk about the Bears, with Khalil Mack, of course, there, and they have some other pass rushers that they can throw in. You have the Packers, of course, they have Za'Darius and Preston Smith. They have their guys. I mean, you look at the Vikings, they've been stacking that defensive line. They have pass rushers. So, yeah, I mean, you got to have guys that can protect at the tackle position. So that's why, it's going to be a valued position. But now, let's get into the on the film. Now, yes, I will nitpick this pick. Okay, I will nitpick here a little bit for Penei Sewell, but that's what I should do, right? I mean, you don't want me to just say, well, yeah, that's kind of an issue, but I'm not going to bring it up because, it's nitpicking. No, I mean, this is our 7th pick in the draft. The question is he worth it? But there's no perfect prospect. I'm going to throw it. There is no perfect prospect. There's not one. I mean, every player has something to work on, right? Every player does. So you can expect that it's not going to be perfect. He's not perfect. But I am going to nitpick with certain things maybe not as much as others, but yeah, let's just dive right into it. Now let's start off with the run blocking portion for Penei Sewell first before we get to the pass blocking, because I do have more notes for the pass blocking. So we'll try to zoom kind of through this. Starting off with the run block category, I love him best in a zone run blocking scheme, which I think is exactly what the Lions are going to do a majority of the time when they run. Not to say they won't mix in man run block schemes, because they of course will. I mean, you have to, but he fits perfectly for a zone run block scheme. It's where he graded out the highest, and I think it's just because he has all the traits to fit that, aside from great length, but he has the quick get off, his movement in space, and then of course his blocking at the second level tied with power throughout his body. It fits him extremely well for that kind of role. He also has pretty good balance for a guy at his size. Actually, here's a weird little theory. I think the fact that he was 350 pounds as a guard in high school helped him, because when he got to the college level and he trimmed down 20 pounds, he's like, whoa, man, this is super light, but it's not that light. You're still a big dude, but he can move. Now he moves in space so well, and for a guy his size, you don't see that. His ability to block to the second level is insane. It's absolutely incredible. And he does it better than any tackle I've seen. He can pick up linebackers at his size. He can pick up linebackers. He can pick up defensive backs. Of course, he's going to whiff because those guys are small. They're agile. But he can do that and create big holes. When people say there's these wild plays on his tape, well, that's what it is. It's not that he's mauling people, dominating, putting them into the ground. It's the fact that he can work his way to the second, to the third level and create these massive holes for running backs because he can pick those guys up because of his agility in space is just tremendous, and his ability to, usually keep pretty good balance out there as well and create big holes. And I love the fact that he always wants to get involved. I mean, this guy always wants to be involved in a touchdown. He wants to create the hole, and then he wants to foul you in the end zone, and he wants to celebrate with you, right? He loves that part, and his motor is always running. He's always looking for someone to pick up. Always. I mean, this player doesn't just sit there. If someone slips by him, he's not going to stand there and be like, okay, well, I don't know what to do now. He's always looking for somebody. If someone slips by me, okay, I'm on to the next. I'm on to the next. I'm going to keep picking up guys. He's got an incredible motor. And then he has a lot of strength throughout his body. Really, there's no like weak parts, like he's got a weak upper body, weak lower body. Very strong throughout his body, so he can deliver some big punches. And if there's no one across from him, he'll deliver a punch to an interior defensive lineman. If there is, he'll deliver his big hits there, and then he'll try to work his way to the second level. Now, in a man blocking scheme, I think he lacks a little bit of consistency here in terms of sometimes staying connected. Not to say that he doesn't, but sometimes, his strikes can miss. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. And that also comes as a pass blocker, is his strikes are inconsistent. So it puts him out of position. But zone blocking, it's all about lateral movement. It's all about movement in space and then picking up guys that cross your face, basically. And there's not many better offensive linemen suited for that type of role. And when he stays low, when he gets good positioning, he can absolutely drive guys backwards. Absolutely. I mean, he won't give you the type of mauls or pancake blocks that a guy like, Tevin Jenkins will, but he also blocks to the second, third level better than any offensive lineman I've seen, and he's 330 pounds, 6'5". It's crazy. It's crazy. The only thing, like I said, lacking here is really the length side of it, but he can go from left tackle to pick up a linebacker before he can get in the backfield. Not all the time, but he can do it, which is kind of crazy. The things I don't love with him as a run blocker is, first off, he's not a consistent finisher. Okay, there's too often where he doesn't finish off the defender that he's run blocking, and that's not always a terrible thing. But if you consistently can put these guys into the ground more often, you take them out of the play. You take out any possible situation where they can get back into it. And there has been a few, not many, a few occasions where the guy that he's blocking gets back into it because he doesn't finish the playoff, mate, right? He doesn't put him into the ground. And I think for that, it is technique. It's not all about just simply mauling. It is technique to finding ways to put people, and finish off the play, pancake block. And we'll see that as a pass blocker, he has a great technique for this. But as a run blocker, you don't see as many finishes on tape as I think you would like to see, especially with his strength. Next up, his balance can be a little out of whack. And this goes to missing strikes, which kind of puts him out of position because we're talking about just a run blocking as a whole, but also the fact that he has a tendency to lunge. And a lot of that comes from missing strikes. But he will kind of lunge forward to the second level. And once you do that, I mean, he's kind of off balance and he's just reaching, and then he's going to slip and fall. He falls too much. He falls too much trying to block. And, that's bound to happen when you're blocking to the second level consistently, but he does fall a lot. Guys can slip by him because, he'll get high. He'll get very high. He won't get great leverage. He lacks getting consistent leverage, staying low, kind of driving. Sometimes he tends to get high here and it really throws off his balance. None of this is like consistent, like, oh my gosh, every play I'm seeing this. It's a little bit nitpicking. You see it here and there, but he's not perfect as a run blocker. What is my point? I love him more as a zone blocking scheme, but I think technically, what he really lacks here, and this is overall as in his game, is the technical side of things, cleaning everything up in his game. And of course, you're not going to be perfect, right? The guy is literally 20 years old. The last time he played was 19. You think this guy's going to be technically perfect? Heck no. But that's really where he's lacking in the side of his game. But athletically, size-wise, power, he has all of that. There's some little nitpicks, though, as a run blocker. Then that moves me on to him as a pass blocker. I just want to stop in real quick to let you guys know that if you guys are ever interested in investing in our favorite sports teams like us as Detroit Lions fans, you guys should check out www.symbol.app. It's a way to basically invest in your favorite sports team and earn a payout when your team wins. So for us as Detroit Lions fans, now we can finally invest in something that we actually know. And with the draft coming up very soon, this is your opportunity to get involved. You guys can use promo code DOD for a $10 bonus deposit. Check it out. Now we got much more to talk about here, but let's dive into the things that I like about a pass blocker. Again, open field ability. This goes to both run blocking and pass blocking. The fact that he can block in the open field like he can is crazy. Now, for Oregon, this was set up perfectly because they ran so many receiver screens. As I mentioned, a lot of play action rollouts, a lot of zone block schemes, and then a lot of screens. So he was asked a ton to block out there in open space, defensive backs, linebackers. And while he wasn't perfect, he could miss guys. And, of course, it's tough to pick those guys up in space. He could also pick them up in space. And, of course, once he got his hands on one of those guys, there was no playing around. I'm just going to throw you into the ground. I'm 330 pounds. You're 200. You're going to get thrown into the ground, all right? Defensive lineman, lineman, doesn't always finish them off consistently. Defensive backs, he's throwing those guys in the ground. And he can move so well out there that he's always asked to be someone that's a lead blocker in space. So, I think, in the pass protection, you'd love to have that kind of athletic tackle. But then the fact that you can still receiver screens, you can ask him out there, running back screens. This is the type of lead blocker that you want because he has the motor to continue to just say, who's next? Who's next? I'm going to keep finding people to block. And then the fact that he wants to be involved. He wants to get involved in that touchdown celebration. So he's going to try to meet you there. He's going to try to meet you in the end zone. And, you watch his pro day numbers. This guy just graded out so well. You go back to pass protection. Now, this is kind of more, at the offensive line, moving backwards. Because one thing I do think is I think he's better right now going upfield than backwards. Backwards, more protecting, more waiting on things, more maybe the technical side. While upfield, he's just, trying to be dominant. He's just trying to fly around. He's using the athleticism. He likes to block upfield. Blocking backwards, can be a little bit more shaky. However, he can move with anybody thrown at him. Anybody. He can mirror anybody. Defensive backs, cornerbacks, linebackers. He has the get off, but also the quickness and mere ability to follow anybody around the edge if he gets off on time. There are certain times where he's a little bit late, but for the most part, if he's on schedule, there's not a guy out there that's too quick for him, which is crazy. He's 6'5", 330 pounds, and he can mirror with anybody that you'll find. So speed rushers for him is more about just getting in the right situation. Of course, the technical side, which we'll get into, but in terms of just pure speed, he can mirror anybody around the edge, which is just phenomenal. And that's part of the things that's like, well, can't teach the athleticism side here. It's just like he has it. So it's a lot of everything that he has that he lacks right now, to me, is just all things that can be coached. And I think that's why a lot of people are viewing him as the best tackle, because there's just so many things that you can't coach. He has flashes of very heavy hands where he can just, kind of stand up people. Usually he's not going to get bullied by defensive linemen in a straight up battle. He's not going to be pushed back by really anybody. Really. The only time he's pushed back, and we'll get into this, is when his hands are out of position, when he's got bad placement. But if he's, just straight up one-on-one, he's not going to get pushed back into the pocket. He's got a lot of strength there in his lower and upper body. So a lot of strength. And of course, that punch, he can deliver some blows, and he's always aware of what's flying around him. And he always, like I said, he's always looking to hit somebody. I love that. He's always looking to hit somebody. No one in his face. Okay, I'm going to punch this guy next to me. Not actually punch him, but I'm going to knock him off his feet. Obviously, that's a little bit easier, but I'm going to knock this guy off his feet. It's simply raw talent. I guess that's the way to put it. Raw talent here. Like I said, uncoachable traits that people love. His release, as I mentioned, is usually good. He is very comfortable against stunts. I love him against stunts, actually. Very comfortable. You can see there's been a lot of practice against this. That whether that's interior defensive lineman popping out to go against him, he has the size to take him on. Speed rushers popping outside, he can take those guys on as well. Very comfortable and very aware against stunts. He's very aware, kind of keeping his head on the swivel, watching back and forth. If no one crosses him, he's going to help out the interior offensive lineman. If someone crosses his face, obviously he's going to pick him up, but he's always aware of that. You don't see situations where he kind of forgets, then he just starts turning the other way. No, he's always aware of stunts that are coming his direction. He's had a lot of experience. People throw those at him a lot, trying to get him kind of discombobulated, but it doesn't happen. Recovery speed is probably, though, my favorite part is a pass protector, because I said he has raw talent. This is one of those things where it's like, okay, I can't teach this. To get into the weaknesses soon, or things that I think you could improve upon, not necessarily weaknesses, things I think you could improve upon, but when you talk about recovery speed, it is outstanding. I don't know how he does it sometimes. He can be beat by the initial attack, and he'll be like completely off balance. He's falling backwards, then he'll get himself back into position. And his athleticism to recover is crazy. I'm talking about speed rushers. He can get back in position to get right back in front of you in a split second. It's crazy. And that's huge, because for a guy that's not all technically sound, you're going to get beat. And you're going to get beat at the next level, even if you are technically sound. Has the athleticism to recover. And again, at his size, he's going to get right back in front of you. So if you get past him, you better make something happen, because he's going to get right back in front of you. His recovery speed, his recovery ability is, to me, some of the most impressive plays I've seen, because it's like, how did he get back in front of you? Like, you beat him off this. How did he get back in front of you? Not all the time, but he can. A lot of these are nitpicking, but that's the point, right? We got to be nitpicking. First off, the offense that he played in. I don't love the fact that we just didn't get a lot of pure one-on-ones, okay? Even you watch him against Utah, which was his lowest graded game, and this is concerning a little bit because Utah was Bradley and I. We know the 5th round pick by the Cowboys. He was the top pass rusher. This was the top pass blocker, and it was like, okay, they're going to go at it. Even in that game, first off, any game, you don't see a lot of pure one-on-ones because they run so many screens, so many things with zone concepts. You don't get straight drop back, me against you, let's see if I can hold up. You don't get that a lot. So it's hard to gauge, okay, how well does he do throughout a full game? You might get glimpses, but you don't see it consistently throughout a game. Then there's the screens that are mixed in, which of course he's not blocking. He's just, going outside to go block downfield. So you don't see it there. He's letting his fast rusher by him anyway. And then you watch him against Utah, when he does have those opportunities, a lot of times they have a tight end on that side. So he's taking, he's really slowing down the pass rusher, and he's limiting to inside moves. He can't get to the outside. He can't bend around the edge because you have a tight end there. It's smart for Oregon because, hey, you don't want, to let the best pass rusher do well. So they did whatever they could to slow him down, but you just didn't get enough one-on-one rep opportunities. The fact that his lowest graded game came against Utah, which was the best pass rusher facing Bradley and I, is slightly concerning. Not to say he looked bad in that game, but there was times he was beat, but he wasn't clearly beat. There was no one I saw dominate him, but again, we did get the opportunity to see him go mano-a-mano all game, and it was like, let's get it. Let's get the popcorn. It just wasn't that kind of offense, which does stink. This is a part that I should have mentioned, probably in the good side. I do like the fact that he pulls down and finishes. His finishing move as a pass protector is great. He's got this pull down move, kind of like Tevin Jenkins does, where basically when the pass rusher reaches out, he'll take like your lead arm where all the energy is going, and he's basically going to slap that arm down. He's going to pull that arm down, and all of your energy is just kind of thrown into that, and you're going to fall on the ground. He has that move, and he uses it over and over and over and over. But aside from that, doesn't really have another move to finish you as a pass protector. There is lack of consistency there. There's actually, and I know people say he didn't give up a sack. I don't know. Tell me if this is not a sack. I know he pulled him down, which was a pass rush move that he did. He went to the finish and he finished him, but he actually fell into the quarterback and kind of sacked him. That should be counted as a sack. But anyways, does have that great pull down move. It just isn't always extremely consistent, very nitpicky here. And I think he could add more to that, upgrade. Maybe you could say his finishing moves, because there's not a ton here. That's kind of his go-to. But, it's not a bad thing. It's just that's his go-to. Pass protector, one issue that he does have, and it just didn't get enough opportunities to see, how he could do throughout full game here. But one issue that he does have, and this is where people critique his hand technique and hand placement, is that, like I said, he can miss strikes, which obviously throws his balance off. But then he has a recovery ability to get back in position. It's like it never happened. It's crazy. That's the thing you can't coach. But his hand placement can be sort of rough. Strikes can miss, and sometimes he gets his hands way too far outside. Now, he doesn't have tremendous length here, so that can also show up. And his length does show up getting beat inside. It's the same thing that shows up with Rashawn Slater, because good pass rushers will start to the outside and they'll work their way back inside, and they'll make you overcompensate out there because you don't have the length to just reach. So once that happens, when you step outside, they work back inside. Didn't happen very often, but it did happen versus him. Same thing that could happen with Rashawn Slater. That's where the length does come into play. It is a factor. It can come into play. But he allows sometimes pass rushers to get inside his chest, and he'll get too far outside. He'll work outside the shoulder pads, and obviously you got to worry about holding there. But not only that, you also have to worry about the fact that he can get pushed inside. And as strong as he is, when you're reaching and a guy pushes you here, you lose all balance right away, and you lose a lot of energy, a lot of power, a lot of strength, and that's when you can get completely thrown off. But then, of course, he's got the athleticism. He's like, okay, I'm back in front of you. But at the next level, that's an issue, right? Because if guys can do that, then they have better second pass rush moves, and he didn't play against really many top pass rushers, aside from Penei, who he didn't even go against that often one-on-one. He didn't go against, top speed pass rushers that much, and it was like, okay, yeah, they may have made him, backed him up, but you're not finishing off the play. You're not finishing and making something happen out of this. And when you did see flashes of guys throw at, really good pass rush moves, like the spin move and thing like that, they could beat him. People could beat him. Zach Bond beat him pure speed off the edge, and see little nuances by these pass rushers that make him so talented, but he has that great recovery speed. Didn't see enough of those reps because he didn't get enough of those opportunities to go against those reps. And that's why I said, to me, he's not the most polished prospect as an offensive tackle. I don't think he is. But that's understandable. The fact that he last played at 19 years old, but the upside to me is unmatched in terms of what he can be. But he's not as polished as I think some other tackles are in this class. But I also think that, we didn't get to see him in 2020. I don't know what he worked on this offseason. He could look a lot better than we know. This is just from 2019 film. And secondly, his upside is, you can't teach the size, you can't teach the speed, the recovery ability, these type of things that he possesses. I think one last point I have to mention is he is very aware of holding, and he does a really good job of releasing. He just, hey, hands up. It wasn't me. I didn't hold there. He gets his hands up. So I don't know how many holding calls he has, but I would guess it's not that many. I think he does have a false starter or a few, because I did see that. I saw him very smart with that. So I would bet there's not that many holding calls, but I don't know the numbers on it. Overall, this is obviously a ridiculously talented prospect. If you ask yourself, hey, is this worth 7th pick? Yes, it's worth 7th pick. When you consider who's going to be there at 7 or what players would be available there, there's no perfect prospect. Is he worth a 7th pick? Yes. If you want tackle and Sewell's there, you could definitely take tackle. Obviously, depending on what he's showing you, right tackle. If he can move the right tackle and you're confident in, him playing that side, he can definitely be worth the 7th pick. The big question here is that he's probably not the most polished now. But again, that's why I'm saying, hey, if the Lions want to do this, even if it's super early in the draft, you have to understand that, yeah, he may not come in and be as dominant as you hope, even if it is the 7th pick. You have to be aware of that, because offensive lineman, it can really be tough to translate year one. It can really be difficult, especially for Sewell, who didn't play last year, who last played at 19 years old, who's already shown, some technical issues. Little nitpicky, some technical issues. He's gonna get beat. I can see him now getting beat a few times during the year, and people saying, oh my gosh, this is not good. He's terrible. But it's like, okay, hold up though. Got to give him some time. The guy is a little unpolished. He's not the most polished prospect, but I don't think there's a tackle with this much upside. I really don't. So if you're comfortable with him playing, being able to switch to right tackle, whatever you want to do with that, maybe he could even play guard. But my thing is that this guy is phenomenally talented. He does things that you just can't fathom. And then, of course, he fits the scheme to me perfectly for the Detroit Lions. Again, assuming he can play that right tackle position, but I definitely think he could. It sounds like it isn't that tough of a transition. It's just getting used to it. And, he's probably working on that lately, and he's probably been working on that through, the offseason. I would think that's what he's been doing through 2020. But, yeah, is he worth 7th pick? Yes. There's too much talent. There's too much size, too much uncoachable traits. However, is he going to be the most polished? I don't believe he is. I don't believe this is the most polished tackle in this class. Hate me all you want. I don't think he is. I think in terms of players being polished, I think there's a couple of guys I'd probably take that I would think would be a better day one player, but I think upside wise, it's tough to say. Now, of course, upside is just potential, and you have to be able to teach them things. You can't just say, okay, he has upside, but he'll get there someday. No, you actually have to teach them. You need good coaches, and Hank Fraley has done a really good job here. So, is he worth 7th pick? I think he is. I think talent-wise, considering he's going to be there, it could be Jamar Chase, could be Smith. I mean, he's just as talented as all those guys at their own respective positions. So, Penei Sewell's legit. He's grades out really well, but he's not the most polished to me, but he's got ridiculous upside. If you're wondering, where do you rank him amongst your tackles? I mean, you got him or Slater, him or Jay, it's him versus Terrell. So, well, that stuff may start coming out tomorrow, maybe actually Monday, I'm not sure, when we start to get to the big board stuff. It's not live on DoseOfDion.com yet because I want to wait for the video, but you guys can check out DoseOfDion.com if you want to see some prospects. But it's not live my big board yet, but once we go through the videos, I'll make that portion of it live. But we'll be doing that very soon, so stay tuned for those. So I ain't going to say nothing right now. He could be 1, he could be 7. He ain't 7. He's not 7. But, we'll see. Let me know your thoughts, guys. Well, thank you for watching, and I'm out.